Welcome to the virtual couch. Please take a seat. For pillars, emotional maturity, and for pillars, what a treat. You're not broken, you're a human, so check that out. You don't know what you don't know is what it's all about.
Hey everybody, welcome to episode 423 of The Virtual Couch. I'm your host, Tony Overbay. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. And today we're diving into the challenging but the crucial topic of betrayal trauma. But before we get into the discussion, let's start with an exercise to set up today's episode. Now, if you're driving, pay attention to the road, or if you're on the treadmill, you might need to slow it down a click or two or wait for a little break. But I would love it if you could sit up a little bit straighter. Square off those shoulders and give me a big old cleansing breath in through your nose and then out through your mouth. And if you're up for it, go ahead and hit pause and maybe give me 2 more of those and then hit play. I'll be right here. So now that you are a bit more grounded, I would love for you to imagine that you're standing on the edge of a forest. And beyond this forest lies a beautiful meadow. It's a place of peace and growth and healing. But to get to this meadow, you have to navigate through a pretty dense, dark forest. And as you start your journey, you're going to encounter thick underbrush and thorny bushes and fallen trees and stickers and a couple of spiders and some kind of gross bugs. And it's going to be uncomfortable, and it could even be painful at times. And the urge to turn back to the familiar open field behind you is strong. But if you push through step by step, you eventually reach that beautiful meadow. And you can rest, and you can rejuvenate, and you can grow. And there's a little puppy there too that's adorable. But change, much like navigating through that forest, is often really uncomfortable. And it's filled with obstacles and challenges that can make us want to retreat to our old familiar ways. Returning to what we know is always an option. And there is power in even just thinking about planning a new journey. But remember that even the best situations will come with their own kinds of discomfort. But it's through this discomfort that we grow. So learning to sit with our discomfort, it's an incredible skill. And it's how we learn to self-soothe and to build resilience. And this is not natural for most of us. I don't think really any of us, because we've been conditioned from our childhood to just get over it or don't worry about it. And when it comes to the difficulties of feeling betrayed or dealing with the shame as the betrayer, it does often feel like a really big deal. So trying to brush it off can feel like a personal betrayal. And all of that is really, really uncomfortable. But when we learn to face discomfort without immediately reacting, we do start an essential part of the healing journey. And slowly but surely, as we learn to self-soothe, we start to truly tap into our intuition, our inner guide, our core energy, our authentic self. You know, the child within us might still kick and scream with anger and rage and bitterness and shame, but the adult that we've grown into can finally step up and protect us. But this takes work, and part of that work, a big part of that work, is learning to sit with and tolerate and grow from our discomfort. And doing so allows us to listen to our hearts and our emotions, begin to trust our instincts and chart our own paths. And it's how we start to grow from every interaction in life, not just the good ones, but also the sad and the hurtful and the scary ones. So learning to sit with the pain of discomfort and tap into our core sense of self, it's an incredible skill. And it's one that is such a key part of emotional maturity and becoming more emotionally consistent. Now, this concept is really closely related to what in mindfulness we refer to as the first and second dart reactions. That first dart, that's the initial pain or the discomfort that we feel from all kinds of things in life. And it's inevitable and it's often unavoidable. But that second dart is our reaction to that discomfort, which can either amplify our pain or it can help us navigate it. And I think we don't often understand that part. Because if we react immediately to the first dart with fear or anger or avoidance, we're throwing a second dart at ourselves, and that increases our suffering. But if we learn to pause, sit with that discomfort, respond mindfully, we avoid that second dart, and we start to see our way through the forest to this meadow, and we can pet that puppy. So in today's episode, Marla Christensen, my associate, formerly known as intern, rejoins me on the virtual couch, and she offers some insight that I can't speak to myself because it's the view from the person who has been betrayed. And if you're a frequent listener, you'll know that Marla is married to Nate Christensen, another therapist who has been on this podcast many times, and know the betrayal that Marla experienced. And she'll talk about it's not at the hands of Nate, but it's further from her past. But on that note, if you're a fan of the Leading Saints podcast hosted by my good friend Kurt Frankum, Marla and Nate were recently interviewed by Kurt. And I think that episode's coming very soon. And Kurt told me that they cover some amazing topics around addiction and recovery and spirituality. So look for that episode coming up soon. But today, Marla and I discuss how understanding the flawed nature of memory, the impact of shame, and our need for certainty can help couples navigate their path to recovery, even through betrayal. And we're also going to share some strategies for building more emotional regulation. And of course, there's going to be better communication skills. I'll bring out my beloved 4 pillars, and there's a stronger foundation for trust and growth. So I think it's safe to say that you can now get a little more comfortable. See if you can do your best to open your mind, and let's take a little journey through this challenging, yet I promise you rewarding process together. So with that said, let me welcome Marla Christensen back to the virtual couch. Okay, Marla, welcome back to the virtual couch.
Thanks. Great to be here.
Last time we recorded, I was in the same building as you are, and we did not have the best Wi-Fi, and we didn't know that till after.
Yes. And I think I'm still having a little bit of lag.
Do you find yourself lagging life when you're interacting with others? Is there just a general lag?
Maybe there's some truth there.
No.
I'm lagging in life. I'm going to put on a bumper sticker. Lagging in life.
I want to just say the more that I am getting to know you in our supervision time, and again, you're an associate LMFT and an associate LPCC, is that correct?
I'm an associate professional clinical counselor and an associate marriage and family therapist.
Okay.
Full licensing.
Okay. And then can you explain to those listening the difference between the two? Because it is a cool thing to have both of them.
Yes. So California, where we live, MFTs are like the king. Everybody loves an MFT. There's a ton of them in California, and the rest of the United States, there's not so many. So they're heavily populated in California. A lot of people who live here try to get that license because they can do a lot of things, work with individuals, work with families, work with couples. But their slant is mainly on relationships, different types of relationships. A PCC is a professional clinical counselor. They are more directly with the individual in mental health and as well as addiction. And I wanted the versatility. My program did both. And so I was like, okay, if I'm doing both, I might as well just take advantage of both. It means double the tests and all the fun stuff. But I wanted the versatility to be able to move to a different state in the future if I wanted to, and to have my license kind of be portable in different areas and be recognized. And, if I'm really being honest, I wanted to do one more than what my husband had.
Yeah, your husband,
There's
Nate.
that pettiness there.
Right. Okay, I have to ask you this.
My competitiveness.
We were talking before we hit record about a colleague that I so miss dearly, Shauna Roberts. And I used to work with Shauna. And when I went to get my licensing exam, Shauna gave me her test material. She was wonderful. She was hilarious. But then she also said, feel free to fail the first time around so I can always have a one up on you. And then I ended up passing. That made me laugh so hard. Nate's about to start getting ready to take a licensing exam.
Yeah.
Your thought?
I've been watching him and I'm like, oh yeah, mess it up. So I know what to do and not to do. Anxiety still going through it with him and then going through it with myself. I'm like, I'm doing this twice.
Yeah. Okay, you guys are wonderful. I asked Marla today and for more of Marla's background, go listen to the episode that we did. So I'm not trying to just ignore that, but I know time is limited and we can talk. I think where we're going to go today, we're going to talk a lot about, go a lot of different directions. But I asked Marla if she could come on and poke holes in I don't want to be dramatic and call it a controversial theory I have on betrayal trauma, but that does sound real dramatic, doesn't it?
Yeah, I like it.
Okay.
I'm ready. I'm curious.
Okay. And so even as I prepared a lot of notes for it, and this is where am I just looking for validation? And I normally don't prepare. That doesn't sound very helpful, but I want to take you on my train of thought and I would love to get your thoughts. Just, you're somebody that has a lot of life experience that brought you into therapy. You are working with couples, you're working with individuals, you're working with the addicts, you're working with betrayed. I'm curious about your thoughts and I'm open to feedback. I'm going to sit with any discomfort. I'm going to be aware of any rejection sensitivity. But I was initially trained in betrayal trauma by an incredible person, Dr. Kevin Skinner, and he has books out about betrayal trauma. And I even have a certification. I've never admitted this out loud that has my name misspelled, but I think it still counts. My last name is misspelled. But I learned so much from that. And there's a concept in betrayal trauma called the formal disclosure. And I have a really good friend that I've been on his podcast. He's been on mine, Jeff Stewart, who that's one of the areas that he really focuses on is helping people with that. And when I had him on a long time ago, another good friend and podcast host, Brandon Patrick, first came on and talked about the formal disclosure and talked about sitting down with the person who has been the betrayer and then coming up with this, here's everything that they've been through, what happened, and then present this formal disclosure almost as a gift to their spouse so that then they can begin the healing process. And I've been a part of many of those formal disclosures. So this isn't me saying, oh, I don't know about these things, but I've done many of them. There have been some beautiful moments. There's a lot of moments of hurt and pain. And what I've been doing the last few years with, I think, quite a bit of success, but then not talking about it because I almost wanted to avoid the discomfort of it being challenged. But I've been really open with the clients that I've been doing it with, is that there's a few concepts I think going into that formal. So when somebody, let's just go with a really stereotypical husband has been unfaithful. And so then the wife finds out and she catches him. And it could either be, there's so many different variables here. It could be caught going to massage parlors or hardcore pornography or any of these kind of things, caught, or the person finally just says, hey, this is what I've been doing. And so then in that scenario, then the husband comes in and then I always say nobody stops and says, hang on, we shouldn't have another further conversation until we get a therapist in here.
Right.
They don't,
Right.
right? Okay. No. So then in this scenario, then the husband starts saying, okay, the wife says, okay, well, how long has this been going on? And what have you been doing? And who was it? How many times? And she's immediately just devastated. This has blown a hole in her whole foundation of her world, which I completely understand. There's so many amazing analogies around. Somebody just came up and broke her leg and then ran away. And now she still has that broken leg she has to deal with. But then the husband is operating from this place a lot of times of incredible shame, and then just a part of that not wanting to have to talk about it, but also there can be a part of that doesn't want to hurt this person that he cares about more than necessary. So there's that concept of a staggered disclosure where then, so all that does is then the more that she does ask questions, then we get back to what do we do with our discomfort? And if she asks and gets angry and frustrated and threatens, and which I get, and it makes so much sense why she would, then he starts to leak out more and more of the information. And then now we've just trained the whole cycle of staggered disclosure. And so then anytime they do want to have a conversation about it, it's almost like he starts then trying to manage the information that's being shared. And then that makes her more frustrated. So I don't know. I've got so much more, but I'm realizing I need to say your thoughts going in, and have you had these experiences?
Yes.
Okay.
I've had them personally.
Okay.
I've never done a disclosure like in a clinical setting. However, I have my own feelings. So I'm curious if they align more with you.
Okay.
The need for disclosure, like I will say, like having gone through the process myself of wanting full disclosure.
Okay.
At the time, it was all about alleviating my pain. And then I think on some level, I've learned since being able to map my partner again, my brain needing
tell me about
where
that.
are the holes? What's my reality? Because your reality does shift. It shatters. And then you start looking at every part of your life. It's not just your partner. You're looking at everything. Well, if the one thing that I really, really love the most, that I could trust the most, did this to me, what else is not real? So I need to now go through every map in my brain and say, is this real? Is this real? Is this real? And it's exhausting. And so you're trying to get your partner to say what was real and what not real, so I can trust you again, so I can make sense of all of my reality. It really does distort everything. And I think it's why sometimes women have that midlife crisis, or they just go off the edge or go crazy, as some people say. And I certainly felt that. I really wanted all of the truth. Now, I will say, I call them the staggered disclosure. To me, is called the terrible Tuesdays, because in my own personal experience, every Tuesday I got more information, it seemed, either from him or somebody else or something else. And it was like this story was kind of slowly filtering out. Initially, it was like, yep, that's it. That's all I did. And I was like, okay, cool. My life is okay. And then Tuesday hit and there was more of something. And after so many Tuesdays, I would wake up on Tuesday and just be like, is this ever going to end? What's coming today? I'm bracing myself. Tuesday's happen and I'm going to get more today. And then I got to a place where I was like, I'm never going to know.
How long did that take, Marla? How long was that process?
Years.
Okay.
Years for me of I'm never going to know.
Yeah.
Yeah. And maybe if I stay, I have to be okay with not knowing everything. And since then, I've learned, like in therapy, there's that weirdness of what even does my brain remember? We confabulate, we lie to ourselves, we tell her that we don't remember things because we just get old and don't remember. So am I really getting truth?
Yeah.
Or am I getting his filtered truth? So what do I do with that? And is it really beneficial? Is it really helpful? And what do I need this information for to help me feel better about? And how is it helping me?
Yeah.
Is
Okay.
where I went.
Well, and I appreciate that too. And I think I'll probably check in probably a dozen times on people that are listening. And there's by no means are we saying that then, so there shouldn't be the conversations.
Okay.
But I'd want to just bring this awareness to the process because I think that there's maybe a way to do some work before going further with that disclosure. I like that you brought up confabulation. That's one of the things I think is so fascinating. I jotted down a few notes around confabulation and betrayal trauma because typically we're putting confabulation around emotional immaturity or narcissism. I really believe that when somebody is caught betraying their partner, whether it's viewing porn or having an affair or some other type of betrayal, I don't think it's a secret to say they operate from such a deep place of shame and they're not proud of their actions. They've been justifying this behavior to themselves for a long time. And then I think that's a big part of what leads to confabulation. And for people that aren't familiar with it, that's when a person does start to create these false memories or these narratives. And here's the thing that's interesting. Working with this population of emotionally immature, narcissistic people, people will say often, well, they knew it. They were doing that to be nefarious or to deceive. I know that I will never really understand what is going on in another person's mind, but I do feel like confabulation is something that's been happening since childhood. It isn't necessarily an intent to deceive, but it's a way to fill in the gaps of memory with these inaccurate, plausible to that person details. And I think because it's when they're trying to say, no, I can't be this person that did this to somebody that I care about. So then it must have been this other thing. When I talk about the emotional immaturity or narcissistic person that confabulates, that they often see the world through this distorted lens to begin with, or that false self. And so that's where I think that starts as a coping strategy during childhood, especially in those unstable environments where their self-esteem was hanging by a thread. And so they rely so much on external validation, which then also comes with a combo pack of lower empathy. So then I think that's why they then feel like, okay, I can't have been the person that just did this to my partner. That now it just seems broken and devastated. So I love what you're saying about as much as it breaks my heart here. So let's set the stage. So we've got somebody that then is doing this terrible Tuesday or the staggered disclosure, and they're doing it because there's probably a part that wants to alleviate their own discomfort. And then also in theory, try to protect their partner or themselves from how bad it might get. And so then
the duration may be long. Like they may have been cheating or doing these things for years. How are we expecting somebody to remember decades of something maybe?
Yeah.
You know, it's different when it's like a one-time event and you're like, oh, can you tell me about last weekend when you did this one thing? But if you've been doing it for decades, how much do I remember the last decade of my life even? Would I be able to sit down and disclose all the details of my last 10 years to somebody else?
Yeah.
That's an interesting thought there as far as wanting something that maybe isn't there. They're setting their own perspectives too, Tony. You know, I mean, they have their own world and how they view things. You're saying this is, but they're like, no, that's not a lie. That's not how I define it.
Exactly.
And so you're dealing with the perspectives of worlds butting up against each other.
I'll get to that part in a bit too. I think, I'll bring up the whole mechanism of memory because memory is packed in with all the details of your experiences, your emotions, your feelings. And that's what's so wild is that you can have two identical twins standing side by side and they see the same input and they have completely different output because their whole lens is different. That confabulation piece too, it is so fascinating when you're aware of it. I'll give you an example that just happened a few days ago. When I moved, I had to download my medical history. And I have been talking about a torn meniscus for 5 years now. That is why I haven't been able to get back to ultra running and I'm starting to put more miles on now. I was able to look and find the diagnosis. And I remember going to the MRI. I remember sitting with the surgeon. My wife was there. I've got a whole story created about everything that went there. And I'm aware of confabulation. I'm aware of creating memory. I'm aware of all of those things. But when I read it, it was not what I thought it was. And it really even wasn't torn meniscus. It was these cysts on the back of some tendon that I think are rubbing up against the meniscus, which causes inflammation. And I even thought, did they change this? Because there's nothing of the conversation with the surgeon I remember now. This is where I want to tell you the concept of confabulation and the mechanisms of memory. I would promise you that the surgeon said that my meniscus was almost like, and I heard it playing basketball, which is ironic because I'm this runner forever. but that it was that he said something about that it was almost looked like, I swear, shredded chicken. So there's nothing even remotely close that says that in the information. And to the point where I even thought, did we stop and get chicken tacos on the way home? And now I've introduced that concept into memory. So now I've confabulated and put away this memory that was all of this that was said. I'll bring that up, but just say now we're trying to talk about something that somebody already feels internal shame about that hurts their partner, that they now feel like, to get rid of discomfort, that no, I'll never do it again. Because when I say that, then that makes me feel better. And you just need to know that I'm sorry and I won't do it again. And so that's the part where I just still feel like I know we're going to get to the more of the formal disclosure piece, but the person controls when they're confabulating the narrative or they're doing the staggered disclosure, they're trying to avoid shame. They're trying to control the narrative because that allows them to maintain a little bit of their own self-worth, avoid the painful reality that they hurt the person that they love. So I'm curious, in your experience then, did you end up at times almost having empathy on the betrayer because of their confabulated memory or the frequent revisions or controlling the narrative?
Yeah. I think initially, no.
Okay.
Initially, I was like, come on, can you not remember this? This was a huge,
Yeah.
it was huge for me. Was it not huge for you? And then I think after a while, like understanding that maybe that was his perspective and things like that, that maybe there was just a little bit more here and I couldn't expect him to remember, or he didn't want to remember,
Right.
or wasn't even able to remember.
Yeah.
And so I was asking for something that I was just never going to get. And then what do I do about that? How do I sit with my own discomfort and my own pain of, I'm never going to know the truth. Can I really trust this person not knowing these things? Is that okay even? So it brought up a lot of discomfort and questions on my own self and having to look at me, which, let's face it, I didn't want to look at me. I wanted to look at him and I wanted him to fix him. So I didn't have to fix me.
Yeah. Okay.
Some of that is like us not wanting to look at us and own our part. And I sit with a lot of women, they're like, I don't want to change. I want him to change. And I'm like, I understand that. We're always better off when we change ourselves.
Hey, now I didn't even anticipate going here because this is one where I almost feel as if, as the male therapist, and if I'm working with a woman who has been betrayed, where I'm going to stay so far away from that. And I will often say to the clients I'm working with that, hey, I don't even feel like I want to ask you to do anything work-wise right now because you're just going through all of this trauma that you did.
I've had that experience and I always say, I understand what it's like to be where you're sitting right now. I empathize with you. I want to validate your experience. It's extremely painful because it is. There's no way around that. And I said, I wish though that my therapist at the time would have sat me down, validated the heck out of me, made me feel good about it. And then told me, hey, these are the patterns you're in. We can talk about this every week, or we can really take care of you.
And what would that look like?
Would you like help to take care of you?
Okay.
This is going to keep going indefinitely.
Yeah.
And you're going to keep coming in and we're going to keep doing this. Or we can learn some skills for you. And whether you stay or whether you go, it's the same, but you need skills.
Yeah.
And so what does that look like? And that's going to feel invalidating me telling you that. Are you okay with me telling you that? Yeah. Because what I really want is to help you. You're sitting here for me to help you. This is extremely painful. I don't want to watch you. I mean, that's my own discomfort. I don't want to watch you tortured in this way. Right? If you need that, then I will be that for you. If you want to come in here every week and you want to talk about that, I will wholeheartedly do that for you if that's part of your process. But if you truly want something different, then we're going to have to lean into your discomfort and look at you. And that's incredibly hard considering you've been so violated in a lot of ways at this. And it's going to feel like, oh, I have to change again. And oh my gosh, it's always about me. And why can't he just do this? And I get that. But I really wish that somebody would have told me that. Because in the end, I had to do all that anyways.
For sure. And I like that you're saying that.
Well,
and I think that part of the challenge is trying to find that balance of, okay, I'm walking along here beside you and you do come up along this thing. And then I say, okay, what do you want to do here? And then being able to, I guess, just challenge hey, do you really want to not take action right now? And there's a concept that a friend of mine was talking about that I really thought was powerful here. And I want to ask you, I'm finding myself wanting to go to time frames, which I always say, don't go to time frames, because then if somebody doesn't do it exactly that way, then they think I didn't do it in the right way. But I would love your thoughts on what point do you think you go from that place, or would you have liked your therapist maybe right there beside you to then saying, okay, hey, now it's time. Because I like what you're saying about that really is a me thing. But at some point I'm taking ownership of that and saying, okay, I don't know what it's like to be you, but I do.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm going to say Liam Neeson from what Taken. I have a certain set of skills that I want to at least provide you with, but you can use those as a muse and tell me that I can put those skills somewhere else if you're not ready for that right now either. What kind of time frame are you looking at there?
I think it's different for everybody.
Doggone it. Okay, come on now. We
Yeah.
need the day and we need
I
how many
think
days?
that I think, and then when you see somebody totally discouraged, they'll drop hints that like, I'm tired of this. I'm so tired. I'm so worn out. I'm so like depleted. And at that point, it's like fishing. You just gotta
Yeah,
throw
it
out
really
there and you
is.
say,
Yeah.
are you ready for something different? If you are, I mean, I had that conversation with a client today,
Okay.
and it was literally like,
Hey, which is ironically a
yeah,
Tuesday when you were
it's
saying that
a
earlier. So
Tuesday.
we're going to take back
You
your
know, and it's,
Tuesdays, Marla. Okay.
yeah, it's literally, I don't want to invalidate you. I want it to be sympathetic. I want to be empathetic. I want to be compassionate to what you're dealing with. But are you ready for something? And this is going to feel incredibly hard and ouchy. And I'm sitting here with you and we're going to get through it. But are you open to something? And I've had clients say, no, absolutely not. And then you respect that. And then I've got to say, okay, be gentle, Marla. And I'm like,
Totally.
okay, well, let's do it. Let's give you a little bit at a time. But it's hard. It's
Yeah.
really, really difficult conversation to have too.
It is. And I think
As a
what's interesting is
therapist.
you teed it up well for what I think I will find somebody at some point say, okay, I just don't think I can do this anymore. And this is where I'm hoping the rapport has been built because in a kind way, I want to say, okay, well, you actually can because you are doing this right now. And so then but now it's time to look at something else or we're just going to continue to do this. And that is a little bit of that can kicking. It's the people don't make a change until the cost of inaction is greater than the cost of action. Up to that point, the cost of inaction has been lower. And so then it costs you less emotionally almost to stay. But at some point, not doing will cause that. Did you feel that at a certain point when you were going through that?
I was talking to my husband, Nate, about this. I'm reading a little bit of David Schnarch in Passionate Marriage, and he talks about the two-choice dilemma.
Yes.
And I'm like, oh my gosh, my whole life I was calling that the poison shot.
Talk about it. What is it? I haven't talked about this yet, Marla. The two-choice dilemma.
For me, it was the two-choice dilemma is two choices that both just are not great. They both pick at your anxiety. They're both, negative. I called that the poison shop. I would tell people literally like staying or going in this marriage is like standing in a poison shop and knowing I have to pick poison. Both of these choices feel like death, but I get to choose the poison. Do I want the poison of staying or do I want the poison of leaving? I get to choose whether or not I die like slow and my breath slowly like leaves, or I get to bleed out and then vomit and die. They're both going to be painful. They're both not going to be fun, but I still get to choose.
Yeah.
I don't want to choose. And not choosing is also a choice of staying in this anxiety of I need to choose.
Yeah.
And so the poison shop is the two-choice dilemma.
And it doesn't sound that fun. It really doesn't. But then, right? But that acceptance of that we are here. And I think that's the part where sometimes people revert back to that, bless their heart, that child who just says, okay, I don't want to do it. And then the parent comes and picks them up and says, okay, I got you. I'll carry you. And I heard in a book one time, and I love this concept, but it was that when you were a little kid and you didn't have that choice to make, you grew yourself an adult to help you make those choices. So then let that person take over at this point and not the little kid, because your little kid was saying, I can't wait till I'm an adult so I can have those choices. We just didn't know they would be two types of poison.
Yeah. And for me, I mean, even not making that decision caused me lots of pain.
Did it? Okay.
So the pain is inevitable.
It is. It is. So there's an acceptance of that. And so let me get to this part too with the memory. And then I really appreciate your experience with this. So then I want to touch really quick on the challenges of memory, because I'm watching the Chad Daybell trial and I'm watching people just memory, and it's so crazy and confabulated. And it's wild to think sometimes that the justice system does deal so much with memory from years ago. Where were you on the night of, or that sort of thing? Because I often refer to, and I got this from the Buddha brain, which Nate had recommended to me, but the implicit memory, or what it feels like to be you, is based off of the slow residue of lived experience. So that is the unconscious automatic memories that shape all of our perceptions and behaviors and feelings. And so there's this concept of, I think the betrayer has this emotional residue of shame and guilt and fear, which then influences how they remember things, how they recall and disclose their actions. And I think that sometimes when you look at the mechanisms of memory, it's like as the memory is filtered in, that it's being filtered through a particular lens. And then as it's going out, it has a particular lens that then is all chock full of defense mechanisms. And so I think that they talk about in Buddha's brain, they say that the way memory works is it's not a static, perfect recording like in a computer, but it's this dynamic process. And I remember hearing this and it just makes so much sense. But every time we recall a memory, we reconstruct it. And that's influenced by our current emotions, beliefs, environment. Yeah. And so those memories change over time. But then they talk about how now it's put away and it is a complete memory at that point. So when it's brought back in, then strong emotions like the ones involved in betrayal can influence how the memories are formed and recalled. And then stress and anxiety and shame can warp the perception as well. And then that's where I think the gaps in memory come in, and here comes confabulation. And so then when you're looking back at, and again, and I'm just like stating this for the record, Your Honor, but so now if we're saying, let's get this formal disclosure, we've got all this concepts around memory and now we've got inaccurate recall with the shame and guilt, and then the desire to get out of this discomfort and say, you need to trust me. And I like that you brought up that a few times, because I will often tell a client, oh, no, you don't have to. There's an acceptance that I may not trust this person. So then I'm not feeling crazy if I don't. I'm starting to say, okay, that trust has to be rebuilt. I'm guessing maybe that didn't work. Yeah.
As far as
like
memory and and I think it took a long time to get there, to understand that these were his perspectives, and his perspectives were changing and shifting based on, like you said, his emotions and his needs and things like that. And there were times that we would discuss something months later, we'd be like, no, I didn't do that, and I'm like, am I going crazy here? And so but I did come to acknowledge that is how he wrote his history.
There you go. Okay. And again, the reason I was smiling there was I was saying, we're not talking about Nate.
Yeah. Nate too, and I think that that's a little bit of mercy and grace in that, like, this is his perspective. This is mine. My choice really is, do I want to stay with somebody that does that or has those perspectives? Do I need to be right or wrong? Am I moving forward in a way of, okay, I know this now. What do I do with this knowledge?
Yeah. And I like that, where
decisions based on that.
So then the emotional consistency in the relationship, really, if we're looking at betrayal and trying to show up different, and I'm going to run out of time here before I even talk about, so here's the secret. Here's the new sauce of how to work with betrayal. But I think this stuff is so important to understand. But so if I'm with somebody that is going to completely rewrite and change the history, and they're convinced, even if we're accepting, if somebody's hearing this and saying, oh, okay, so I have to accept the fact that they have a confabulated memory and the mechanisms of memory are flawed. And well, you don't have to, but if you are, you're in essence signing up for accepting that this memory will probably continue to shift. Is that fair?
Yeah, correct. Just knowing what you have, I think, is important. I had my therapist tell me this: what you see is what you get with this individual. Knowing that this is what I want. I want a pony, but really I have a zebra.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
With one leg longer than the other one.
So it's an acknowledgement and trying to stop fighting that. Like, am I trying to change this person? They're not going to change. And can I just accept and be okay with that and stay in this relationship, accepting this much and still be true to myself?
True to, and I think I'm glad you put that part. Yeah. Because if somebody's saying, well, yeah, I guess I can, but then it's that, and be true to myself, I think can be really difficult.
Yeah.
Okay. And I'll add one more component then. And this is that we talked about certainty, and I'm so fascinated by the concepts of being certain as well. And there's a book called On Being Certain by Robert Burton that I really think is fascinating. And he's a neurologist who looks at what he just refers to as the underpinnings of our desire for certainty. And it makes sense that we want certainty because it will calm us down, and how then that desire for certainty then does impact our thoughts and our behaviors. And so he talks often about the feeling of knowing as a mental sensation, and that's what gives us confidence in our beliefs and our decisions. But it's not necessarily based on evidence or logic. And in the book, he's laying out neurological processes. So I think that when somebody's betrayed, that feeling of knowing is disrupted, which then can lead to a complete disorientation and mistrust. So I think I'm wanting to just continue to make this case in a sense that if we're trying to jump right in there and memory is flawed and we're looking for certainty, and then the emotionally immature, perhaps, person's confabulating memory and it is going to change, then that quest for certainty, man, it's an innate drive for us, but it will lead to oftentimes then I think the obsessive thinking and then an intense need for answers. So then I think that's where we start seeing for the betrayed partner, it's asking for more and more and detailed and assurance.
I want safety. I want to be confident that I am safe. If we look at our brain is a do not get killed device.
Yeah.
We want to be safe. And so what your partner has told you is, I'm not safe. You've lied to me. So you're not safe
Yeah.
now. So I want to be confident. I hear a lot of people, and even myself, looking at somebody and saying, I feel so stupid that I trusted you.
Right.
How do I trust anything that I do now? Well, yes, but is it better just to say, I choose to act that way? Like,
Yeah.
I want to be a trusting person, and it works out most of the time. This person chose to do this, and that's on them.
Mhm.
But I still want to be a trusting person. And I value that, and I want to move
I
forward
like
in that
that.
way. And so I can still have confidence. I don't need for them to be completely honest for me to feel confident.
I can be confident in the fact that they are being honest, which is an interesting concept where, and maybe that is it's a good segue for, so here is the treatment plan. So here's what I'm proposing that I've been working with for a little while. And I know maybe we can come back on and talk about it at a different date with more details or experiences. Now, so I'm accepting the fact that I've done many formal disclosures. And I will tell you this part where, again, I've had some of them that have been pretty good. I've had others where it's so interesting because I'm almost feeling like I'm trying to sell the partners on this is a good thing. And then when you end up having that actual meeting, and sometimes they're 2 hours, 3 hours, and we've got the formal disclosure and we present it to the spouse. And then there is a lot of discomfort. We're trying to say, here's this gift to give to you that then now you'll have all your answers. You'll feel certain. And now we don't have to talk about it again. And that's part of the way that you start to express it. But then you watch almost the shock and awe in a sense of some of the things that they thought that I did not anticipate this part of the disclosure. And then what I think is even really interesting is that there have been times where then the person will come in and then they're saying, okay, no, I'm not supposed to ask more questions, but why? And now we're back in what I've noticed over time is then we're back in the staggered disclosure where even if I'm saying, oh no, we're now it's time for growth and we're going to get the new communication skills and they're just locked in though but I need answers because I didn't know this part. Now I have all the information, but that just brings up more questions because I want certainty. And you just watch that cycle repeat. And then I worry that at times where I've seen where then the couple feels like, okay, we're not good at this at all. We're working with a therapist. We spent lots of money. We've done the formal disclosure and then we don't feel good. And I think that's such a
Yeah, and I'm
challenge.
still stuck on the fact that you're calling it a gift.
I know. And Marla, I want to go back and find the interview where that came from to make sure I haven't confabulated that. Right. Okay. So let me say this real quick too. Let me lay out so here's maybe the more deliberate approach of healing betrayal trauma 2024 edition is that so I do quite a bit of psychoeducational work just that before I start by laying out that the concepts of that. Well, first of all, it's that we don't know what we don't know. I'll talk about memory a lot, memory being flawed.
Yeah.
And how shame works and how shame impacts disclosure.
Mhm.
I'll talk about that need for certainty. And I've got a lot of is replete with metaphor. And so there's a lot of things that you can do to bring more attention around these concepts of needing certainty. And then this deliberate approach then is delaying full disclosure. So I'm not even saying that we're not going to do it, but I'm going to take it. And just like in 4th or 5th grade with one of those red playground balls, I'm going to kick this thing so far across the playground that I'm going to delay this disclosure and we're going to build a foundation of understanding the concepts around memory, certainty, developing some emotional regulation skills, talking more about being differentiated, understanding that healing process. And then I really do go back to my beloved 4 pillars because so much of what I think happens is, again, somebody's coming in here, there's betrayal. The person feels horrible that got caught and the person feels worse that it happened to. Now they're coming into the therapist and they're saying, make us feel better. But they don't even know what they don't know. And they're saying, but I need to know and I need this. And it may seem like one of the most invalidating things to do. But for me to say, hey, let's slow everything down right now. And then we're going to learn that with the discomfort of having a conversation about, do you prefer to retire in the forest or at the beach? Because they take great offense and you've never told me that. I can't believe that. But why do you say that if you get sunburned all the time? And really, do you want to do that? And if you want to live at the beach, then you must hate how much money I make because I'll never afford the beach. And that conversation can go south. And now we're going to talk about betrayal and disclosure. So I rest my case, Marla. Your concluding remarks, your thoughts, other than that's an amazing approach and you can't wait to implement it yourself. I'm kidding.
No, I think that's a wise approach.
Oh,
I
you're
do
so
think
kind.
that when you talk about betrayal and you talk about all of the stuff that is disclosed in a disclosure statement, it's a lot. It's a lot of hurt. And when you find out that there's infidelity or other things that are in a marriage that were not known, that are now known, there's a lot of emotion.
Mm-hmm.
And it is hard to talk and be rational with emotion present.
It is. Yeah.
And so you do need the skills to learn to communicate in a way that is productive. Otherwise, your emotions are just talking, and they can
They
talk
really are.
indefinitely because they feed each other. And so, yes, you will find that they're just angry. I was angry at my ex and the things that he did. And so it felt good to be angry. And so there is
Yeah.
that period where it just feels good to just get it out and to say what you have to say. But there does come a time where you need to learn how to constructively say what you need to say for them to hear those things,
Yeah.
really take them in. We don't teach that to our children.
No, we don't, huh?
And so you don't know what you don't know. And so
Yeah.
while it feels like I'm kind of avoiding this elephant
Yes.
in the room,
Right.
I'm teaching you how to ride that elephant because you're going to need to take the ride.
Yeah.
We got to learn all this stuff, the boring stuff, before we can have the fun.
Hey, can you talk about,
it will
before we
come.
started, well, and before we started recording, you had mentioned a little bit of the research you've been doing around the concept of lying. Can you talk, maybe give me, because I don't want that. That was really good. And there were some things there that I wasn't aware of. So what were those concepts you were talking about?
There's a really interesting book by Sam Harris about lying, and it's really super short. And when people talk about lying, I tell them to go read that book because he talks about the different types of lying, like acts of commission or acts of omission. He talks about honesty is really a gift that we give people. And that when we're dishonest, we are denying access to reality.
Yes. Well,
So sit with that for a second. When I'm dishonest, I am not letting my friends and my family and my loved ones know what reality is because we're trying to map everything.
yes. Because it takes courage to know somebody, and it takes a lot of courage to be known, because it is going to make you uncomfortable. And we are so avoidant to discomfort that then that makes sense. And it's interesting too. I'm doing a podcast on the alleviate ADHD a little later this week about, there's I don't know if it's new research or it was just a fun article, but it talks about the adding fibbing to fight, flight, or freeze as this defense mechanism, and that it's really about the development of language. And so now humans have the ability to lie in order to get out of discomfort. And so that's playing right into maybe what we're talking about here too.
Yeah, kids are really good at that. You will see them all the time. You shake that cookie. No.
No.
Because they know they're going to get in trouble. So they're going to lie to get out of it. And so it is definitely. And why does that change when we get older?
Yeah.
We don't want to be in trouble.
Right?
So we're lying about it.
Yeah.
Lying to ourselves, lying to other people. Dishonesty is about shifting reality. And so for people to live in a relationship where their reality is not where it is, that's like a trusting kind of issue there.
Yeah. Hey, any final remarks? I just really appreciate that. I sometimes hesitate to say that was fun, but I enjoyed it because we're talking about a sensitive topic, and I appreciate you sharing your truths. And again, the more that I talk with you, the more I can understand that this is a career you were born for. And because I'm so convinced you have to have the life experience to be able to really speak to it authentically as a therapist. You can learn a lot of skills and still help people. But I think there's something about the energy, the vibe of when somebody really truly knows. We'll never know exactly what somebody else is going through.
It's hard earned, but I'm grateful for it. I think this has put me on a path of like really learning differentiation, which I'm grateful for. I'm like, why am I almost 50 and learning this? But it's great. And I'm excited about sharing that with other people. And it's hard because I want to share it, but I need to also honor what they need in that moment.
Yeah.
So there is that balance there. But my hope is that they'll get to a place of softening, that they'll want to learn.
I like that.
On some level that.
Hey, so I'm going to put this out right away. And then you and Nate were on Leading Saints. That's coming up soon. We'll promote that, which I'm really excited about. You and Nate also have your own podcast, Working Change, that I can put in the show notes. And then you have a little bit of space for clients. So if anybody connects with Marla, resonates with her, then just reach out to Marla at Marla Christensen Counseling.
Yep.
At gmail.com. Okay. And I'll have that. Or you can reach out to me through the contact form on my website, and then we'll get you in touch with Marla. But all right, Marla, now you're in. I want to do this however often. We'll have some new ideas, kick them around and poke holes in them, and then change the entire world. No pressure.
It's fine. I'm on it.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Marla.